All right, I show that it is 6:10, so we will go ahead and call tonight's meeting to order. I do not believe there's any changes to the agenda, so I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
East Sac County Schools empower all students to become productive, responsible citizens of an ever-changing global society. We'll take a minute now for public input on non-agenda items. Okay. We will then move on to the secretary report.
So as far as balances go, the operating fund did increase a bit this month, and that's just a timing issue of we got our big, it seems like semi-annually, the state gives us a big deposit, and then our expenses were a little bit lower than normal too. So that's what caused that. If we go to the year-to-date expense report, that's still kind of projecting the same full year estimate as it has been. And then this month, I mentioned last month that I put together a breakout for the instructional expenses. So this is general fund instructional, since that's the largest portion of the total. And you can see, I don't have the percentages on here, but I think it's like 75% of the instructional expenses are salary and benefits. Then we got a lot of open enrollment there. Transportation, that's actually not our transportation, that's transportation to Region 12, I think, is why that's showing up there. But otherwise, I don't think anything really stood out to me when I was looking through that stuff. So, any questions for me?
I do not. All right. Next up, we've got no correspondence.
No correspondence.
So we will move on to administrative reports.
And actually, I have an update. I'm sorry, Tyler. So if you could just add something. And then, so Mr. Heulenbrook, if you could go to the next.
Oh, we can share.
We can share.
What do you want me to go to?
Oh, that's different.
Maybe just to that last, since they
Oh,
have
that?
that in front of them. That last
Okay,
part.
there you go.
Right there. And I do have another one.
I want
So I just started with the quote up there, thinking about the elementary and how we operate, where our goal has been to get systems in place. And so there's a quote from James Clear: you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. And so that's just something that we think about. So goals obviously give us direction, but it's our systems that determine whether we get there. So the other thing, we keep our vision and mission in front of us as you read the mission of East Sac County every board meeting. We intentionally keep that in front of us as well. So that's part of our system. And then the other part is our collective commitments, which you don't have on there, but so that's just part of our system. And our collective commitments are how we behave, or how we strive or aim to behave. And those aren't just words on paper to us. We really return them consistently because they anchor our work and guide our systems. So these are the systems that we've really worked hard to put into place. So our data team meetings every 6 weeks. In fact, we meet tomorrow for our final end of the year data meeting. And that's where we dive deep into our student performance. And those meetings are grounded in our mission of empowering students and in our commitment to support each other and hold each other accountable. As we look at that data. So we use that time to collaborate, analyze data, make student-centered decisions, and because we've built a consistent system, we can quickly then identify what's working, what's not, and then respond accordingly in our meetings. The other system that we have is our PLC teams. So we meet weekly, those meet weekly. They have 1 hour each week. A really powerful example of our commitment to cooperate as a team and implement with fidelity. So in those meetings, teachers analyze data, adjust instruction, track progress, and the elementary teachers take this work very seriously. They're very deeply invested in that work. When results dip, they don't retreat, they dig in. So that mindset of shared responsibility and support shows up in their growth mindset or the growth that we see in our students. Our attendance team is another system. Oh, I forgot curriculum fidelity. So teachers use our curriculum with fidelity, but also stay responsive to student needs. So as they meet, they really think about following the expectations and holding themselves accountable, but they're not just delivering lessons, they're actually examining the content, ensuring alignment to standards, and then they make real-time adjustments to move forward. So I guess that's that system. And then the attendance team. Attendance is a vital system for student success. So that team meets monthly to review data. Heather leads up that team, reached out to families, create student success plans, and we also collaborate with the county attorney. So that creates an external layer of accountability and support. So that's been very effective in our commitment to build relationships and communicate and seek solutions. And then our PBIS system is a culture of positive behavior. So obviously we've had that system ongoing, which that includes explicitly teaching expectations, the consistent follow through by all adults, and then aligning our vision of creating a safe, caring environment. I know I've talked about this, but we've added it to that system, our Strat 2 room, which really is a critical component of that PBIS to offer that supportive, structured space for students who are too dysregulated to learn in the moment. And that team meets monthly to evaluate that progress, what data do we have, ensure that our practices are aligning to student needs. And then I think a big thing too is just the teachers, that the people behind the systems, they don't just implement the systems at the elementary, they own them, and they support, communicate, and hold each other accountable and adapt. And they have really been relentless in the pursuit of student growth. So we just kind of wanted to talk all about that before I get to the data. And so I did update your data from what I had sent to Nate. So some things to keep in mind, if you're looking at the spring, I have the literacy screening data, and it's just a snapshot of our building. So you can see how we compare to the schools that are in our AEA and then across the state. So in literacy, and that's been a big improvement over the past couple of years. And something to note, like last spring, we were 65%, this year we're 66. While that doesn't seem like a lot to you, that continued growth is something that we really look for. And then math screening data, you can see our building there and how we compare to, again, the AEA and the state. So we're above in both of those areas. And then a goal that our elementary has had is to decrease the percent of students that are at, we call it at high risk. And you get identified, well, I shouldn't say high risk, that are persistently at risk. So persistently at risk means, if you go back up to literacy screening, we screen them 3 times a year, fall, winter, spring. If a student is not at benchmark for 2 consecutive screening sessions, they are now persistently at risk. Or they can even be identified that if they, like in the winter, they don't meet it, let's say they meet it in the spring, but the fall they don't, then they're on our persistently at risk. So, and we've targeted the percent of students that have an IEP. And so you can see, we just have the 2 years that we looked at that data. So we've gone, you can see by the spring of last year, we had 70% of our IEP students were considered persistently at risk. And this spring we're at 64. Again, doesn't seem like a huge, but you have to keep in mind that some of those students have been identified as being disabled in the area of reading. So to have students that reach benchmark, we celebrate that success. And then this is just of all students. So that's the next chart there is all students that are, so including our students with disabilities. So just something to note there as the trend that I look at. So in the spring of 23, we had 151 students, or 39% of our student body was persistently at risk. And then to this spring, we're at 27%. So that's something that our team is really celebrating because we've worked really hard at that. And we would really like to see that number at 20 or below, but we are definitely heading in the right direction. So And then the other side of that is, I think the same as what's in your packet. So our behavior data on Panorama, 85% of our students are at low risk for behavior incidents. Attendance data, the state goal, they want us to be above 95%, and we are at 96.3. And Heather maybe has something to add with that.
Yeah, if you had any questions about our system for attendance or anything, but I was looking at attendance data for the elementary, and last year we had, because now with the law, we have to identify students that are at 10, 15, and 20% absent, as you guys all know. And last year at this time, we had 68% or 68 kids who were at 10%, and 13 kids that were at 15%, and 5 that were at 20. And this year, we only had 19 kids at 10%, so they went from 68 to 19. It's a pretty big drop. Then the 15% went from 13 to 4, and the 20% went from 5 to 1.
What do you think the big difference there is? I mean, why do you think that is? Because of the threat of county attorney, or?
Well, I just think there's a lot more communication and importance put on attendance. I know somebody I was talking to today said that like one of their personal friends, like their family went on 3 vacations during the school year because it's just whatever, but now it's not just whatever. And they didn't do that this year, So I just think with some added attention from the state coming in, and then I think our system is really good, that we have a team that meets and we talk about the data, and then we have partnered with Ben at the county attorney's office and just been a real team. I mean, we developed this nice little flow chart for how we would handle each student as the data comes up, and I just think we've been really open as a team communicating that information, and it's had a big impact, and so that attendance is probably impacting a lot of the success
I think so.
in literacy data and math data.
It's like all of our systems, so the teachers have part of that system, so they're contacting parents when kids get to a certain level and having conversations, and then there's letters that go, but then they continue, then we bring them in, we have a meeting, so there's a whole system that's set up. And then if they get so far, then we work, more closely with them. So.
Thank you.
And then the last, you have our Iowa statewide assessment data there. And maybe Mr. Hiemler is going to talk more about that, but we were very pleased. There's obviously some areas where we want to obviously continue to see some improvement, but something that we've noticed even in the advanced category, we have some larger percentages there than we've seen in the past. So that was something for us to success. So, and I think from my point, I started with the whole system thing because when we talk about improvements on student data, we're not talking about a lucky year or a quick fix. We're talking about intentional systems built on shared values. Our team reviews them regularly, and we ground it in the mission and vision of our school. So back to that, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the levels of your systems. So we really continue to just evolve our systems and make sure they're sound. And questions?
Just a comment. It looks like the hard work and the team strategy you guys have been doing is really making a difference, and that's good. Appreciate it.
Definitely.
All right.
Okay, my board report is a little bit more, just updated some things that are happening and some ideas for policies going forward for the next year. So I did start just with a brief little oversight of what I saw from the Iowa State Assessment on-demand reports. I didn't put the whole chart like what Becky had in there too, because I didn't know what would be shared, if Mr. E. Miller would share anything at all. But when I look at it overall, what I see is a lot of the same growth from last year was there for most of the classes. There's a lot of positive things that we can point to that are still going very well, and that there might be a grade or two here or a subject or two here that we need to dig more into depth of what can be done better in those areas. But collectively and overall, I'm seeing continued growth or kind of keeping the things that we have done from the growth from last year. So like I said, a lot of mine is more kind of policy based and changes and things for next year. So I have been talking about a few different things. The previous board meetings, where like one of them was the increase in the amount of credits to 54. I didn't put as much on that in here, but I do think that that's something that would be good for our students, kind of push them a little bit more from what I've seen. The two that I did have in here, so one of them was the cell phone policy for next year, which I'll describe after this, and then a tier 2 intervention and credit recovery plan for the junior high that they have done in the past, and something that we had talked about this year a few different times, and I'd like to implement again here going forward next year. So the first one was the cell phone policy. You can read what I have in there, but the idea, to summarize it, is to be a cell phone free environment for the entirety of the school day. I know the law, the way it's coming out, is definitely not in your classrooms. Make sure that you have your own policy that's good and like written in a easy way to see in your handbooks. I've mentioned before, you have to have something there about how would they contact the school, and of course, we can have a statement come out for that too, about making sure they call the office and go through that. But what's in there is like what would happen if, so the idea would be cell phones are put away. There's a lot of things that you could point to beyond just the distractions of the classroom. Students' interactions, the way that they, we get to a point where if we have any kind of awkward moment, we just go straight to the cell phones and we don't embrace those social interactions the way that I think that they could be. We're very much getting on our social media and having other things to distract beyond just like that instant moment. But like, you said this about me, and we kind of get into like negative things that can come from the cell phone use, even during that school time. So I think beyond the immediate, there's a lot of things that are good for mental health for the kids, and other things that they could be having different kinds of social growth by that cell phone free environment. But listed in there kind of what would happen on a first offense. And again, I had talked with two other schools in the area, so South Central Calhoun and Newell Fonda a lot lately, earlier in the year, and then I checked in with them again within this last month, like how has it been going? What do you notice? What do you see? And the policy that I took there was pretty much from what Newell Fonda had done for theirs. I thought that when I talked with him, he said he didn't get a lot of kids into that second offense, but when he did, they did things the right way. They turned it in just like it says in there. And again, the comments that he makes to me is just what you see at the lunchroom and different things like that. Instead of kids staring straight down, you see interactions and you see things that could be more positive for them. So if you look in there, the first offense one was that they'd be turned into the office for 5 school days. And that's something that you keep track of, and you make sure that they do it in there. And then on that second offense, it'd be for the rest of the semester. And the idea is that I don't have to have teachers keep doing this over and over again with those same students. And if it's followed the right way, then I don't think there's a lot of students that are going to want to get caught to have to do that over and over again. So that's kind of what that idea was for that. And on that second one, on the day that it's turned in that first time, that a parent would have to come pick it up too, which had been something in previous policy that I think is a good one. Make sure that they have something that they get to see with it rather than just the kid having to deal with it. Any questions or comments on that one? Thoughts?
One question a parent had when I was just visiting with, and I don't know very much about this, but is there kids that have like medical things like diabetes and all that kind of stuff, and they have phone apps or whatever? How are you guys going to handle the medical aspect of it? Or is there anything, like I said, I'm not experienced with any of that, but I hear that there's like the pump is hooked up to the phone.
Right. And that's a good point. And I think even according to the state law, you have to have provisions in there for medical needs. And I think even there was one thing that said for based up on IEP. So those things would have to be in there as well.
Okay.
But those would be the things that we would know about ahead of time. It would be a surprise thing that came to us like.
Okay.
One other question: if a teacher uses a device or has something in their classroom, a requirement, is that going to be allowed, or is that going to be? Are we going to work towards eliminating that?
I'm going to work towards eliminating that. We do currently have at least one where a teacher makes them like take a picture of it or use something else like that. And rather we just use the technology that we already have. This is not like the kids are cut off from like using things that are going to be valuable to society. They're all still going to have probably still gonna have a computer, and there's things that they can use with that. They don't need that.
Maybe one other question. Do we have any issues with it in the 5th and 6th grade age group?
That's another good question. Would, like, no,
I
they
mean-
keep their phones in their lockers and.
They don't get them at lunch? Okay, I didn't think so, but
We haven't had,
Mhm.
we've had that all year long.
that's a good question, Jackie, for that one.
I just didn't know if it would apply the same way. So like if somebody got caught with them, would we implement the same?
We do something similar, yeah, like if it's a problem, we'll just bring it to the office and.
Okay.
We haven't had to. We've had some kids even, we've had a kindergartner with a smart device that, it was enabled and they called their parent while they were getting assessed during their screening. So we've just, if it looks like a device, if it acts like a device, it's a device, and so that follows the policy and it's gotta be in the bag.
So the Apple Watches will apply to the same rule.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, because they act.
they would just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how we've treated it, as a device,
Mhm.
so.
We might want to make sure that's spelled out in the policy when we draft that it's more than just the cell phone then, so that it's very clear
Right.
that it is those devices that connect. I just wouldn't want to get into a
Right.
Q&A with a parent on that if that's
Yeah.
not stated that way.
Absolutely. Right. But it'll be in there for this one. Okay, so then my next one again was a plan for our 7th and 8th grade. And something that they have done in the past, and we kind of did a lighter version of it here with some students this year. But basically it would be if a student is receiving multiple failing grades, the fact is that they are not kind of learning those standards before they get to the high school, and you get to a point where, kids go to the next grade unless you sit down and say, well, I really need to have them retained because they haven't been here enough or whatever, but we don't do that a lot, so a kid could fail 1 or 2 classes and just kind of be pushed forward. So this is a way that if they start failing classes, that we would set them up with an online program we use called Edgenuity, where they're going to make up those standards before they go on to the next thing, even at 7th or 8th grade. Again, I see it actually work well for a few of those students. That even one of them that was on our attendance had attendance issues, and now he's been coming here and made up 3 classes on it of things that he would have missed and not done very well before. I believe it's 3, the most recent thing that I've seen. Heather shakes her head, yeah. So I mean, there's some really good things with it, and you can kind of see when we would look at doing it. One change out of here is that I think we would look more at towards when we get closer to the quarter end. I mean, at midterm, you might want to sit down and have talks like with that kid. You might want to be calling home already, but we would wait and get a little bit further to see if they can still make things up. So some of the eligibility and placement, I do have to change one part of that. But like it says in there, when students complete their course recovery, their schedule is going to be adjusted to either get back into a classroom at semester or at the next quarter, because we're going to try to make sure that we catch them up even for that quarter that they would have missed. But I think it's going to be a good program going forward. That there's a way that they kind of did it where it involved summer school for some of those kids too. So like say that we're behind, we can implement having them come and finish things to again before they go to the next stage, make sure they get those standards. Before they move on. Okay, so those are my big kind of policy ones. If anybody has any questions at any point, you can ask me about those ones. Then just some updates. We had one of our very own kind of Associate of the Year from Professional Educators of Iowa, PEI, came by, and Doug Kramer, who, I mean, he does an amazing job all the time. I feel like he's like always here. Last year he had to have surgery and he felt like so bad all these times that he was gone. I was like, nothing you can do when you have those things happen, but he's probably one of the most reliable, and he does such a great job with the kids. So earlier this month, he got presented with a check for $500, winning Associate of the Year for getting Associate of the Year from PEI. That was a nice event for us earlier in the month. Our seniors got to take a trip, even with Mr. Hemeller, to the state capitol as he drove the bus for them. heard a lot of good things from the kids. They had a great time going there, and a nice little experience for our seniors before they finished up their academic careers here. Our seniors awards night earlier in the month too, on May 8th. We had a great turnout from those kids. You know, a lot of great scholarships handed out and different things and different awards for those kids. And it's great to see smiles on their faces and things like that for the different ones they won, but also the amount of money that some of them are going to get for help towards college, which is great too. Our class competitions were wrapped up, and our 8th grade was supposed to go tomorrow to Arnold's Park, and I just had to send out a message about that, that will be on Thursday due to weather and everything else that had been coming up. So they still will be going, but their trip has been postponed. The seniors won, didn't get some of their picks in for what they wanted to do in time to actually go somewhere. They ended up having a beach day, which is still nice. They were here and around, around town. I think they were a little upset and would prefer to go somewhere, but it's kind of on them for not getting their pick in time. But it was a nice thing for them too. And that senior class hadn't won the class competition stuff, and so like they really had a big push for all the different things we do when we do the food drive and different parts where they can get points for it. They were able to win this year, and that was great for them going out. We also had our vocal music concert on May 13th. Kids did an excellent job there, especially when we had some combined pieces. I think a little more difficult. That picture even on there is all junior high through high school choir at the same time for what they did. And again, they did a great job. And then, of course, some things I didn't include on here. We just had our graduation yesterday. We had an honorary diploma for Orville Von Ewagen, and that was a great event. And he was talking about it with me for a while afterwards, and he was just so excited to be there and do those things. And it was a great part of our graduation too.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
All right, I got a few things to talk about this month. First of all, May is School Board Recognition Month, so I'd like to thank the school board on behalf of the employees here at ESAC and the kids in the district for your dedication to serving on the school board. We all know that it's not a paid position and you volunteer your time, so thank you for that. We're going to talk about initial ISF scores, open positions. Some significant progress has been made in the last 2 weeks in this area, which we're very thankful for. Then the final legislation updates for the year, and then some summer planning stuff we got going on. So first thing, again, thank you for everything that you do. There was a Facebook post that went out with your years of service, and I think, Brent, you're still winning that award. And again, thanks to everybody who serves in the school board. Very much appreciated. The Iowa Association of School Boards appreciates you too. So, all right, first thing here as far as data goes, Mrs. Helber talked a lot about data and systems, and they've been very conscious at the elementary on building systems that help improve student progress. And if we look at the growth in the last 2 years in this school district, it has been awesome, and our numbers are there to show it. So you can see we had that major jump from 22 to 23, 23 to 24 last year, and we're very, very happy with that. The next question is, when we think that we have everybody trying on the tests and giving their best effort, can we repeat that? Can you get it 2 years in a row without a backslide? And so this are just our initial numbers so far, but we're looking at double-digit gains in science again, and then improving in math and English. I would say a lot of the credit goes to the systems in place, the instructional strategies that we're implementing, the teamwork among the buildings. But 2 years in a row of significant gains is a good thing. So shout out to our parents that help and encourage their students to try hard and be good in school and try their best in the tests, and to our teachers for doing the work every single day, and making sure that we're doing our job so the kids can do theirs. So good news there. We'll report out a little more of that as the results kind of finalize, and then going into next year around December, the report card comes out, and we hope to do better there as well too. So, all right, open positions. Like I said, a lot of ground has been made in the last couple of weeks here. The administrators have been doing tons of interviews for certain positions. There's been a lot of interviews conducted, but some positions have been offered to people and they weren't accepted. And it's a very tough job market right now to find good quality teachers. But I think the ones that we have found are going to be rock stars for us going into next year. And so we went from kind of a big list last month to just 2 up there right now. And I'll talk a little bit about that here in the next slide. So when we get to contract offers later on in personnel, we somehow were able to find a high school teacher who is licensed in math and science. And in his application to us had an Iowa license. So Mr. Tedesco and Heather interviewed him, and he is coming to us from New Mexico. He does have some ties to the Iowa area, so he'll be covering some math and science classes for us next year. We're going to be utilizing our ag department a little bit for 10th grade biology. So Amber Hoflin, who's one of our ag teachers currently, will be teaching 3 sections of 10th grade biology. She's been very willing to do that, so we appreciate that. So our high school math and science departments will be 1.5 FTEs going into next year. This year they were 2.0 departments. But the best thing is the second part there is, a month ago we were thinking internet classes, and going into next year, all of our kids in math and science will have a real teacher in front of them here in this building. So big steps made in that area. We were able to offer and get acceptance to a PE teacher. So I believe he's a Iowa State grad, correct, Tony?
Yep.
So that's good. So PE, weights, health, and assistant football, Thomas Cox. And then in the elementary, Becky offered a couple positions to Jenna Henderson and Avery Miller. So they'll be in the elementary next year. And my last bullet up there. So as of today at the elementary, we do have enough teachers to cover our needs, which is a good feeling considering a month ago we did not. So we do have enough teachers. However, a few of our class sizes are right on that bubble. And if we're unable to hire anyone else, we will have some larger section sizes in our elementary. But we're still searching for quality teachers, and Becky does have an interview tomorrow for another elementary candidate, so we'll see where that goes. But good news is we're covered, and the good news is we're looking to hire an additional person for our elementary if we can find one. So a lot of work in that area in the last 2 weeks, and I want to thank these individuals over here for that work and the recruiting and the conversations we've had with people to apply here at ESAC. Final legislative updates. The session, I think, ended at 6:11 Thursday in the morning. Thursday in the 6:11 a.m. is when they finally were done. That was 2 weeks past their time when they were supposed to close. Major things for schools out of the session, 2% SSA, which has not yet been signed by the governor. She has a month to sign all these bills into law. 2% SSA, what kind of goes along with that? We know inflation's higher than 2%. We know staff like raises higher than 2%. So when there's less money coming in from the state, we got to really crunch our numbers here to try to make sure that people are at least happy. So another positive thing, I guess, would be that the bill with the SSA does include moving the operational sharing from 21 to 25. As you know, ESAC takes takes advantage with that, with a lot of our sharing agreements with Arweva. So that's a good thing. Some stuff that kind of came up really late in the session that could have possible implications in the future. There was discussion on property tax reform involving school management funds and Pebble levies. No action was taken this session, but it's something to keep an eye on. As you know, as legislation legislates, stuff that comes up in a year that doesn't generally pass doesn't disappear. So just something to keep an eye on as we go into the future. And then every year this gets talked about and gets talked about right away is the school start date. And all the legislators in our area said, well, this is going to be the year. This was not the year. So no action on school start date for various reasons. All right, last thing I got, some summer planning stuff. So there's going to be some movement of personnel here in the Lakeview building. Discussions have been had with staff, and probably one of the most notable moves is going to be our high school secretary and principal will be moving down to the office by the east entrance. And then we're also going to have another secretary at the new addition entrance as well. So when parents and kids come in our building, they are greeted by a person at the doors instead of just the camera. So looking forward to that. Some other things going on. Scott is coordinating the move of several people. Part of that being anyone who's left in the towers will not be in the towers next year. One of the biggest changes there is probably our art classroom was one of the last remaining ones in the old building. She will be moving out to the part of the ag building out there. So some movement and coordination in the ag building, but we're going to get everything to work and everyone to fit somewhere. So basically after the summer, we are going to be painting, doing some flooring, buying some furniture for those affected spaces to make sure that when everybody moves, we're preparing first so we don't have to put them somewhere and then move everything out to paint, do carpet. We want to coordinate all that together. So Scott's the main person making sure that happens. And then going into next year, Scott will be working with the fire marshal to properly seal that portion of the building off. So lots of reasons for this, and Tony could elaborate. Safety, security is one of them. There's just cost, possible boiler issues with that, boiler issues with that part of the building, temperature issues. So there's a lot into it, and when we get to our work session tonight, Denoma will talk a little bit about that portion of the building as well. The grade stuff with colors, and I believe red was a commonly used color with that building. So we're moving in that direction. There is no set date for action on that, but we'll be ready when that time comes. So that's a lot of administrative reporting tonight. Okay, probably the majority of our meeting, but there's a lot of stuff happening, especially with Mr. Tedesco and the high school policies. These are some hot topic items. It's important that the board knows what's going on, and as they get approved and handbooks get approved, we're going to have to communicate that stuff out because it will be a change. So very common around schools around us. Obviously, the legislation had a priority to limit cell phone use in schools. That did pass. So we're not only responding to that, but again, a lot of reasons for that proposed policy. And so thanks for listening to us.
And thanks for the positive updates. I think that hiring is huge. I mean, to be down to just what we had this year as far as, high school Spanish. I know you haven't quit trying on that, but just may not find a candidate this year.
Sometimes miracles happen. And yeah, I mean, and like we went to 5 job fairs, and going into 3 weeks ago, our admin meetings were like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden some interviews and honestly, a lot of phone calls. I think both of our elementary candidates were people who knew someone who knew someone who knew someone and was like, hey, why don't you give ESAC a try? Mm-hmm. So to the people out there that are calling people and advocating, give us a try. We appreciate you too.
Good. Any other questions or comments from anybody? No. All right, then we will go ahead and move on to the action portion of the agenda. First up are the consent agenda items. I don't know if there's any comments or questions on any of those.
I'll make one quick note on the partial self-funding. It's the same thing we've done in the past with the health insurance. I got a report from the insurance company a couple weeks ago, and they show that this year it saved us $76,000 doing this self-funding. So it's still a good option for us to reduce our insurance costs.
Perfect.
That's good.
And then the other one, the Region 12 is just our transportation agreement with them to get kids to the
NCCS.
NCCS, yep.
Was there any major change in the rate without having last year's agreement? Or do you know, or is it close?
I don't remember the
I was just more curious than anything. So we definitely have to move forward with that. There's not many options. But just was curious. Any other questions on those?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Is there a motion to proceed?
I will make that motion.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second to approve the consent agenda items. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Personnel.
All right, so being that the consent agenda was our only action item this month, we do have quite a few personnel items, as we've alluded to at the meeting, contract offers, a few resignations. First one being Katie Bolin as a cheering coach, and then Nicole Hudrich as an associate resignations, and then contract offers. Anthony Wald, high school science and math, Jenna Henderson, elementary teacher, Avery Miller, elementary teacher. Dawson Allen will be helping Scott with summer maintenance. Brenda Orlick as middle school student council, and then Thomas Cox for high school PE weights, weight room, and assistant football. And then you'll see the TLC contracts listed in the packet. These are done annually, part of the teacher leadership program. The state still has special funding for that category, and we receive that. And then these people, depending on their job title, lead teachers, instructional coaches, mentor program leaders, will help with professional development, all of that.
Okay. Any questions on the personnel items?
I'll move to approve the personnel items as stated.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the personnel items. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
All right, future board meeting date. So June 16th would be the regular meeting date. So if you want to check your calendars and
Looks good. Regular time. Anybody have any conflicts that you know of now?
a few
Looks like we're
items
just-
for that night, staff and student handbooks. So either June or July will be the action on those. Except bids for bread, milk, and propane. That's an annual item. Student fees, we'll be recommending what those will be going into next year. And then if our EMC insurance information is back, we'll be looking at that for renewal. So typically June, not a real busy board meeting. So we'll plan on the 16th.
All right.
Good.
All right. With that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn our regular meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve or to adjourn the regular meeting. All of those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned for our regular meeting.